Hi, and welcome to Appalachian Traditions, a virtual discussion on traditional Appalachian craft, music, and dance. I'm Darcy Holdorf. I'm the program director here at the John C. Campbell Folk School. And first, I'd like to thank you for joining us. I hope that you all are well and that you're finding creative ways to stay inspired at home. We miss having students on campus, and we look forward to the time that we can welcome you back in Brasstown when it's safe to do so. Thank you to everyone who joined our previous webinar in April. We had 240 attendees from 5 countries, and many of you took the time to send feedback, and we greatly appreciate that. In general, the feedback was very positive. Many of you asked for more of these types of virtual programs. So while we can't gather in person, we heard from many people who enjoyed the feeling of connecting in this virtual platform. So we decided to continue to offer this webinar over the summer and potentially into the fall. We also received many requests for more in-depth discussion of one topic, which allows ample time for questions at the end. So as a result, we decided to feature one panelist in this program, Aubrey Atwater, who will give an in-depth presentation on Appalachian music and dance. I am so excited to have Aubrey today. Not only is she incredibly knowledgeable in the history of traditional music and dance, but she's also a delightful person and a very engaging teacher. So this is a rare opportunity to see her perform and present in the intimate setting of her home and to be able to ask her questions. So Aubrey was scheduled to teach a master class this week. The title of that class was Dancing, Playing, and Singing Appalachian Style. Hers was one of 12 grant-funded classes scheduled between February and May of 2020. And these were all taught by exceptionally skilled and influential artisans who have a deep understanding of the cultural and historic context of their craft. In order to help pass these traditions down to a younger generation, we offered scholarships in these classes to students from partner schools, such as Berea College, Haywood Community College, and the Appalachian Center for Craft. Unfortunately, due to the public health crisis, we had to cancel 3 of the 4 sessions of these master classes, including the sessions that would have taken place this week and Aubrey's class. So in lieu of an online discussion, I'm glad that we're able to find these ways to come together in a virtual space to learn and to share. I'm thankful to Aubrey for joining us. She is learning, as we all are, how to use these digital platforms and how to teach and perform when we can't gather in person. I'm going to give you a brief Zoom tutorial before we start, and while I do so, I'll introduce a few of the folk school staff who help make this program possible. If you move your mouse, you'll see a toolbar at the bottom of your screen, and you have 3 icons: chat, raise your hand, and Q&A. The chat box is a place for everyone to interact, so please go ahead and introduce yourselves there in the chat box. Tell us where you're joining from. Our program operations manager, Tammy Godfrey, will be managing that chat box. Tammy, can you tell us how you're doing and what's going on in the chat?
Hi. Well, nothing right now. Oh, it's a coming, Darcy. Ooh, mercy. So, yeah, so we sure do miss everybody here at the folk school. This is my folk school home, is what I like to say. But I will be monitoring the chat room, and we'll get to the questions, I think, closer to the end. Is that correct, Darcy?
That's right.
Yeah. So, so folks, just ask your questions, and we'll get them passed right along to Miss Aubrey.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay, next to the chat icon, you will see an icon that looks like a hand, and you can raise your hand that way. So after Aubrey's presentation, we'll have a brief Q&A from the audience, and if you've raised your hand and I call your name, you will receive a message asking for permission to temporarily unmute your microphone. Now, if you're like me and you haven't had a haircut in about 2 months, don't worry, there'll be no video, it's just your audio. We'll open your audio and you can ask a question for Aubrey. There's also a Q&A icon that will be managed by our IT administrator, Nick Kelishek. Nick, can you tell us about the Q&A window?
Yes, wonderful to be with everyone today on a stormy day here in Brasstown. The Q&A area, you can ask questions there, and I'll try to get to the good ones at the end for Aubrey. And if we can answer them via a text message, we will. Otherwise, we'll let you ask them in person.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it is storming here, so we're just hopeful that our internet connection will hold out. Now I'd like to introduce someone else. One thing that we learned from our webinar that was a bit surprising is that many of you who attended the last webinar had never been to the folk school. So I've invited a special guest to give you a brief introduction to the folk school, and he's going to help introduce our panelist, Aubrey. So many of you know today's guest. He recently retired from a 28-year career at the folk school. He was instrumental in founding 2 of our community-oriented programs, the Junior Appalachian Musicians Program, which teaches traditional music to local youth, and our Friday Night Concert Series, which offers free weekly concerts. He's also created an extensive archive of folk recordings and the 2 volumes of Night Hoots and Morning Songs. He's known for miles around as the best dressed man in Western North Carolina. David Rose.
Well, thanks. They asked me to do 2 things, one of which was to give a little bit of the history of the folk school. The folk school in Brasstown, North Carolina, the John C. Campbell Folk School, was founded in 1925, but folk schools in Denmark go back into the middle of the 19th century. The very first folk schools were in Denmark. There was a theologian there named Nikolai Severin Grundtvig, and Grundtvig felt very, very strongly that all Danes should have an equal access to education and that schools should be for everybody, not just for the wealthy. So he went about talking about starting folk schools where younger people could go and study things. Grundtvig believed that Denmark could only be as strong as each individual person, that if each person got as absolutely educated as they could, that would only function to lift up the entire country. So in the middle of the 19th century, the very first folk schools started in Denmark, and it was so popular that a year later, other ones were starting to pop up all throughout various parts of Denmark. Now, the John C. Campbell Folk School in Brasstown is because of 2 people, one of which is Olive Dame, and the other of which was her husband, John C. Campbell. John Campbell was born in Indiana, but during his youth, he very quickly went over to Wisconsin. A very athletic man, very serious man. I've seen many photos of John C. Campbell wearing uniforms, like baseball uniforms and football uniforms. So he was very much interested in sports and played sports. When he got out of high school and college, he became a theologian, John Campbell did, and began serving humanity, serving humankind. Now, another player was Olive Dame. Olive Dame was from Medford, Massachusetts, and Medford is a small town unto itself within the greater area of Boston. And Olive Dame's father was the principal of a local private school, and Olive Dame was very steeped, very, very steeped in the arts, the liberal arts. She loved dancing, she loved music, she loved singing, she loved drama. She was in plays, very much an artistic person. When she got out of high school in the late 19th century, Olive Campbell really wanted to go to Scotland to look up her ancestry. So with her sister Daisy Dame and with their mother, Daisy and Olive's mother, they went to Scotland. On board that ship, Olive Campbell met John. The 2 of them fell in love throughout their year that they spent in Scotland. And then when they got back to the United States, oral history says that they were practically engaged. I love that. And they married shortly thereafter. John Campbell had been married once before to his high school sweetheart, but when he married Olive, that was for She died, by the way. Grace Buckingham was her name, John's first wife. John's second wife, Olive Dame, very, very artistically oriented, as I said. And they had two daughters, and both of the daughters died in infancy, in childhood. John then, with a weak heart, John died in 1919. And when John died, John and Olive had always talked about starting a folk school. By now, Olive's name is Olive Dame, her maiden name, Campbell, taking John's name. Olive Dame Campbell is the name she's best known by. And John died in 1919. He was 15 years older than Olive Dame Campbell was. And when John died, Olive and her friend Marguerite Butler from the Pine Mountain Settlement School up in Kentucky, they went off to Denmark and visited many, many folk schools. When they came back, Olive Dame Campbell did something she does a lot, which is she wrote a book about folk schools, about Danish folk schools and education in Denmark. She wrote the book. Then they started looking for a place to have a folk school. Marguerite Butler came to Brasstown, and at a public meeting at a local Baptist church, the head of each household handed Marguerite what we call pledge cards. They were 5x7 file cards, and the head of each household pledged things such as donations of land, donations of money, donations of labor. And that's how the folk school got going in 1925, was donations of land and labor and money. Classes didn't begin until 1927, turning into the winter of 1928. Took a couple of years for the John C. Campbell Folk School to kind of get their ducks in a row. And once they got articles of incorporation and bylaws that were put together by an attorney in Murphy, North Carolina, nearby Murphy, once they had the bylaws and the articles of incorporation, they got to work. So the first folk school was founded. The folk school in Brasstown was founded 1925. By 1928, we were having classes, and those classes were in art and craft the way they are today, but were also in things like farming methods and how to be a more successful farmer, how to make more profit, how to make more yield of your crops, that kind of thing. The folk school stayed that way until after World War II. And after World War II, the John C. Campbell Folk School became much more oriented towards things like music and dance and craft and art, and were much less teaching the things like linguistics, sociology, some of those things that were taught when the school first started. The folk school today runs almost around the clock, almost around the year. After the first week of December, which is winter in the mountains week, we go down for the rest of December. Then after the day after Christmas and until New Year's is winter dance week. So we continue to have classes, and we continue to have special events like the Winter Dance Week. So we're here that is about the history of the folk school. We're here to honor a woman who's from Rhode Island and excels at Appalachian old-time banjo, guitar, mandolin, the mountain dulcimer, and singing. Her name's Aubrey Atwater, and she's won a lot of awards for her singing and for her performing. And as someone from the South, who myself have played old-time banjo since I was just a boy, since I was about 8, and really getting into what's called frailing when I was 13, I can pretty well tell when I hear somebody play where they're from. And Aubrey really has the tone and the sound and the touch that comes out of Appalachia. Considering she doesn't live here, she really understands it. And I used to tell my students back in the 70s, if you really want to play old-time banjo, but you're from some place like New York, please go down south listen to elder banjo players from the South, then you'll get the feeling. Then you'll understand you understand the notes, but not the feeling. But Aubrey Atwater does. She's a wonderful singer. It really endeared me to her when I first met her, that she was doing songs by a friend of mine, a guy I've known for over 40 years, who worked at the Library of Congress. That's Joe Hickerson. And I love the fact that Aubrey sings Joe Hickerson songs, but she also plays a very authentic, very sweet sounding mountain banjo. And we should get to her right now. So I appreciate having the chance to speak with you about the folk school history and about Aubrey. Let's turn it over to Aubrey right now.
Thank you, David. Hi, everybody. I'm gonna go up really close. Hi, I've got Elwood. I have a special guest with me. As it turns out, he was home. And he was available to be with me today. But I was supposed to be at the folk school right now. It's a little after 4 o'clock. We would have been wrapping up our afternoon class, getting ready for a break, a walk, always getting ready for a meal. The meals are fantastic. So I have to say that to a certain degree, this is also an age of disappointment right now. And we're all dealing with lots of cancellations and disappointments, but there's silver linings. We're doing other stuff. And I've been spending a lot of time at home lately and fine tuning some of my programs. And we've been playing music almost every day. I want to just tell you a little bit about our backstory, my backstory, and what I would have been doing at the folk school this week and in that wonderful class, which would have been basically a sampler, singing, playing, and dancing Appalachian style. And Elwood and I have a long backstory of spending time in Appalachia, starting with a visit in 1992 to the Heinemann Settlement School. And I was hell-bent on meeting Jean Ritchie. And Jean Ritchie is one of the great and very important Appalachian folk singers and mountain dulcimer players in American music history. And I knew her from that year we met in 1992 till the end of her life in 2015. We're going to talk a little bit more about her. Why don't we just do a song right away, Elwood? So grab the dulcimer. We'll do a signature song from Jean Ritchie. She was the youngest of 14. In a family they called the Singing Family of the Cumberland. And David, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. It really is an honor to be considered an honorary Appalachian in different ways. And because of our long time of trips to Appalachia, we have really steeped ourselves in the music. Elwood and I were both on staff at Appalachian Family Folk Week in Heinemann, Kentucky, for 25 years. And so spent a lot of time with the old folks, with the elders, and learned a lot. This is a song from the Ritchie family, and it has beautiful Scots-Irish roots. So a reminder of the Celtic roots as one part of the root of American music. A song called Pretty Sarah, where the character, the narration is from a man who loves a woman he cannot have. And he was probably an indentured servant. Where dream of pretty Sarah wherever I go. My love, she won't have me, so I understand. She wants a freeholder who owns house and land. I cannot maintain her with silver and gold, nor buy all the fine things that a big house can hold. If I were a merchant and could write a fine hand, I'd write my love a letter that she'd understand. I'd write it by the river where the waters overflow, and I'll dream of pretty Sarah wherever I go. Oh, I'll dream of pretty Sarah wherever I go. So that's one of the signature songs of Jean Ritchie and the Ritchie family. Jean knew about 300 songs from her community and from her family. And like I said, she was the youngest of 14 in a family they called the Singing Family of the Cumberlands of Eastern Kentucky. And I arrived that year at the Heineman Settlement School. I was in my late 20s. And up until that point, I was a folk singer. I'd been singing songs like Joni Mitchell songs. I played guitar. And I had started getting interested in traditional folk music, the old songs, partly because my family owned a home in Ireland for 15 years. And in the 80s and 90s, I went to Ireland a lot. So that was my doorway into traditional Anglo-Celtic folk music. And while I was in Ireland, I read about Jean Ritchie. So I went to the Heineman Settlement School. David Brose mentioned the Pine Mountain Settlement School, and there are a number of institutions that are all connected. Jean's older sister, May, married Leon Deschamps, and he was an engineer and a farmer and worked at the folk school in Brasstown, North Carolina for 17 years. He was the one behind the building of a lot of those stone buildings. So there was this connection with the Ritchie family and the John C. Campbell Folk School. So when you go to the Heritage Center at the John C. Campbell Folk School, you learn about Jean Ritchie, you see dulcimers in the display cases. And so these places are connected, Berea College, and also another place that's connected for me. I'm listing 4 of the most important centers that I've worked at over the years: the Heineman Settlement School, the John C. Campbell Folk School, Berea College, and also the Ozark Folk Center in Mountain View, Arkansas. And all these places have ways of celebrating traditional folk arts. And for me, the singing, the dancing, and the instrumentation of the Appalachian and Ozark regions that have the heritage of Anglo-Celtic, European, Cherokee and other Native American groups, and African American. And when we talk about the ingredients of Appalachian and Ozark culture and the music and the crafts, we're talking about those strands of ethnic heritages. So we would have talked about that a lot. And I always talk about that stuff when I teach my classes. And the folk school is such an unbelievably inspiring place, not only for the students, but for me to be there. People are hungry for this kind of information and learning. The excitement around the learning is palpable. And so we would have had what I sometimes refer to as the instrument petting zoo. We would have had an opportunity for people to learn some songs on the dulcimer. Ted Cooley, the music and dance director, we had already talked about how we were going to rustle up some dulcimers for people to have. We were going to also play, and I'm going to switch instruments here. We were going to also play banjos, and David Rose was mentioning the banjo. So the dulcimer has German roots, German immigrant history roots. The banjo is African American, and the old time banjo, the frailing style, is very much a style of strumming and plucking that you still see to this day in West Africa, people playing their traditional instruments with the back of your fingernail. You'll see I have one strange nail on there. That's actually a fake nail. It's pretty funny. David Rose and I have talked about this, to go into a nail salon and just ask for one nail. But I put my own nail on for reasons that should be obvious right now. So we would have done instrument petting zoo. So maybe some people might have played guitars. We would have done some dulcimer songs, some banjo, and oh, I know, Elwood, I'm going to have you play the lumberjacks. We would have brought in the small percussion. Believe it or not, this is an instrument. It's also the Rhode Island state bird, the Rhode Island red, as coincidence would have it. Here's a different kind. This is a very common type of lumberjack, and the concept of a dancing wooden puppet, a percussive puppet, is universal throughout the world. There are lots of iterations of this in cultures all over the world. And the Appalachian version of it comes from European and Anglo-Celtic people who settled there throughout the centuries. So, all right, I'm going to put this back here. So I'm going to do something that blends the North and the South. I'm going to do something with my feet that I'll just show you for a minute. It's a foot percussion that comes from French Canadian folks, and I learned it right here in Rhode Island. That's a little loud, but you get the idea. So I just wanted you to see that, because I'm going to put us back here so you can see the lumberjacks, and I'll try not to do that too loud. Okay. So here we go. We're going to play some Appalachian tunes. Some of these melodies, like Cluck Old Hen, are traced back to Africa. And so you see this amazing fusion right now with Anglo-Celtic, European, and African ethnic strands. So here we go. We'll do our little lumberjack limber. I'll try not to be too loud with my shoes. So the lumberjack is instantaneous. I teach children how to play that who are as young as 3 years old, which is really fun. And which actually leads me just to make a comment that this program that I was going to do was partly to get younger people involved with the traditional art forms, dancing, singing, and playing instruments. And throughout the years, Elwood and I have worked with many, many young people at the Heinemann Settlement School, Berea College, John C. Campbell Folk School, and the Ozark Folk Center. There are always younger people involved with the programs. And in all those communities, they have folk music being taught in the elementary and middle schools. So they're cranking out young musicians, not unlike they do in Ireland in those particular regions. So I'm always meeting these great players. And sometimes we create pickup bands, or we have guest bandmates in these different places. And sometimes they're like 16 years old and they're fabulous. So we have always been mentoring young people throughout our 32-year career together. And when I hit about 50, I'm 56. When I hit 50, I realized I was the new old people. And so people are often contacting us and seeking us out to teach songs, to learn the instrumentation, to learn the dancing. And I will show you now a little bit of the clogging. So you move that, Elwood, if you don't mind. Yep, and just back there somewhere. And I want you to be able to see me okay. I'm going to do a little bit of flat footing, which I started to learn in Eastern Kentucky at the Heinemann Settlement School. And I would have taught the basic steps for this class. And yeah, you can see my feet. And then these steps, again, are Celtic, English, European, like French and German, Cherokee, and African American. And I would have taught the basic steps like this. And I learned to do this at the Heinemann Settlement School. But then for the next 25 years, whenever I would travel, I would have people show me steps. So I learned all kinds of stuff over the years, like the scissors, and to be more complex with my rhythms. I learned this in Arkansas. Everybody try this at home. You'll play a little bit of the harmonica. So we would have learned some of this. So I've taught whole courses at the folk school on flat footing and clogging, and I've learned some of my steps in Brasstown. Some of the ones I did, I learned from some of the Brasstown cloggers, and whew, a little out of breath here. And especially during those early years, I would seek out some of those dancers, and we'd have these fun swapping of the steps meetings. And that's how I learned to dance all these years. I would just meet dancers. I'm probably clearly by now not shy. So I would introduce myself and ask people to show me things. And I pieced together that traditional style. I wear loud shoes. Historically, people wore leather-soled shoes and danced and worked on floors. And I wear louder shoes, but there's different strands of clogging out there, and I'm a freestyle clogger. I'm not a team clogger. I don't wear the double taps like that. So I either dance with the solid tap shoes or the the leather soles. So we would have covered some of that, and that's really fun. I can teach the basic form of flat footing in about half an hour to most people, and that's a whole dance form. And that's very exciting for people to be able to do that quickly. We would have also covered in our sort of three-pronged class. It was trying out instruments, singing songs, and we sang Pretty Sorrow already, and dancing. We would have covered other kinds of dancing too, like simple square, circle, and line dances, and the play party. And we would have covered all different kinds of songs. So there's two more things we're going to do for my presentation, and I just want to see how we're doing for time. Pretty good. So actually three things for the rest of the presentation. We'll do a song now, and one of the exciting things about teaching Appalachian songs is that the songs are about a lot of different things, and there are all these different categories of songs. They're the ballads where heads roll and blood is spilled, and these long dramas, human stories. There are the beautiful love songs. There are the playful songs, the children's songs, the religious songs, the mournful songs. So there are lots of different categories of songs, and we would have addressed all that, and we do over the years in all these classes. I was thinking we might do a primitive Baptist hymn, just to give you a sense of a different kind of song that we might have covered in that type of session. You want to do I've Got a Mother?
Sure. This guy gotta go.
So this is another song from the Ritchie family, and it is a primitive Baptist song, and it's very much like this type of song would have been sung in England.
I've got a mother gone to glory. I've got a mother gone to glory. Look away over yonder on the golden shore. Away up in heaven, away up in heaven, I've got a mother gone to glory. Look away over yonder on the golden shore. Some bright day I'll go and see her. Some bright day I'll go and see her. Look away over yonder on the golden shore. Away up in heaven, away up in heaven, some bright day I'll go and see her. Look away over yonder on the golden shore. I've got a father gone to glory. I've got a father gone to glory. Look away over yonder on the golden shore. Away up in heaven, away up in heaven, I've got a father gone to glory. Look away over yonder on the golden shore. Some bright day I'll go and see him. Some bright day I'll go and see him. Look away over yonder on the golden shore. Away up in heaven, away up in heaven, some bright day I'll go and see him. Look away over yonder on the golden shore. That bright day may be tomorrow. That bright day may be tomorrow. Look away over yonder on the golden shore. Away up in heaven, away up in heaven. That bright day may be tomorrow. Look away over yonder on the golden shore.
It's fun to talk about vocal styles as attributed to different genres within music and subgenres within folk music. So one of the things we do in this type of class is listen to field recordings in archived recordings of the old timers. In the old days, I used to be able to bring in some guests, real old folks. Now I suppose I'm the guest. And we would listen to those stylings that make it Appalachian singing versus old-fashioned Irish singing, or different types of subgenres. So that's fun to talk about that, and all different kinds of songs. So I always have people do a lot of listening. So Nick or Darcy, I forget which one of you is going to play that play party segment, but I am a guest host on Ozark Highlands Radio, and about 10 times a year one of my segments gets aired on that program. That's a great program, by the way, everybody, if you want to check it out, Ozark Highlands Radio. And I get to do about a 6 to 8 minute segment on a topic of my choosing that delves into the history and the heritage and the culture of folk music and dance. So here's a part of one that I did years ago on Gene Ritchie and the play party. And this is an area that we cover in this type of class. We play games, play party games. So if you will, play that.
Goodbye girls, I'm going to Boston. Goodbye girls, I'm going to Boston. Goodbye girls, I'm going to Boston early in the morning. Saddle up girls and let's go with them. Saddle up girls and let's go with them. Saddle up girls and let's go with them early in the morning. In this segment, I'm thinking about the history of the play party, or the play party game, play party songs, games, and dances. From about 1840 to 1950, that was quite a phenomenon in rural America, especially in the Midwest and the South. In fact, the earliest known play party has been documented in Batesville, Arkansas. So what is a play party? A play party was a social gathering with a bunch of dances and songs and games that were acceptable to church culture and church communities. People didn't want the young people dancing. They didn't want them to touch their waists, and it might lead to drinking or, God forbid, banjo playing or fiddle playing. Those things were thought to be raucous and the work of the devil, sinful, and so the play party emerged in American society. And there were all these games and dances and little ditties. We all remember them from our childhoods, and children are still learning little versions of these, like the Itsy Bitsy Spider or London Bridges Falling Down or Ring Around the Rosie. We still do these with children. There were different categories of play party games and songs. There were the ones for the little kids, like the ones I just mentioned, and then there were some for sort of the middle range age groups, like what we think of as middle school kids or older elementary school kids. Something like Old Roger is Dead was a little song where kids would stand in a circle and sing certain lyrics, and the character of Roger would be lying in the middle. It was almost theatrical, like a little play. And then the older kids, the ones that were courting, the teenagers and the young adults, they wanted to dance, they wanted to interact, they wanted to flirt, they wanted to do it in a way that was acceptable to their communities. And so an example of that would be singing Goodbye Girls, I'm Going to Boston, or Over the River to Feed My Sheep, or Killy Cranky. And they would do intricate dances that we know of as square dances, like the Virginia Reel, to
Over the River to Feed My Sheep, or also known as Charlie or Weevily Wheat. And that was one of the most widely sung songs and dances in the long play party era. And there was no instrumentation most of the time. They were just singing to their heart's content and dancing, basically doing a square dance or a line dance with the moves like promenade and circle to the right, circle to the left, peel the banana, all these different moves, but in a way that was acceptable within the confines of church mores.
Frankie is my song, sing and dance it all day long. From my elbow to my wrist, now we do the double twist. Broke my arm, swing, swing, dancing. Broke my leg, dancing to
Yeah, so that gives you an idea of the backstory of the play party, the American play party. And it varied from place to place. Like among the Ritchie family members, historically, they were allowed to play kissing games. I remember going to a workshop at the Heinemann Settlement School probably about 25 years ago, and this elderly lady was leading it, and she had a bun of white hair piled on the top of her head and a homemade dress, and she was teaching us all how to play kissing games. It was kind of embarrassing. We had to kiss each other on the cheek. Elwood wasn't there that year, but
we went every year after.
Yeah, you went every year after that. So it's a lot of fun to teach these courses at the John C. Campbell Folk School, and they're different every time. I have lots of ideas and lots of materials I bring to the class, but the chemistry of the particular group that shows up, the participants who've enrolled, is always part of the magic. You just never quite know what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what people are going to bring to the table, and what questions they're going to bring to the table. I have one more thing I want to do, and then hopefully we'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A and wrapping it up. I want to show you a video from a class I taught at the folk school a couple of years ago. And every time I teach a class there, I always say they were the most wonderful class that I ever had. It always feels that way. I mean, I was going to say earlier, the magic of the folk school ever since its inception has always remained consistent. I've been teaching there since 1996. So that's 24 years. And whenever I go there, I feel that essence that was laid out in the creation of the school, the excitement, the respect that people have for each other, and the thirst and hunger for learning. And I just find it incredibly inspiring place. So I feel like this particular video that was made for the show and tell, there's like an assembly at the end of every week or weekend, and we all get a few minutes to show what we did. And so Nick or Darcy, let's look at the 2 minutes of this one, and you'll get a sense of what the class did that year. Or not. There we go.
I'm going around
wanna play the banjo and be cool. Make some bread, be a blacksmith. Maybe you'll paint a landscape, gussy up with board. Make something beautiful out of a board. You should come to John C. Campbell Folk School.
Isn't that just adorableness? We had so much fun that year, that week, and they made up those lyrics and everything, and we choreographed. I don't know why I was wearing that dress. I have no idea. I don't remember why I had that outfit on. So that's about it for the program. I mean, there were some really great questions that Darcy had, and I wouldn't mind just addressing a couple of those quickly, but we can also do questions and answers. We have about 8 more minutes, but Darcy, what do you think?
We have a lot of questions,
okay.
So it might be good to address the audience's questions, and we could start with Nick. We have questions. Also, just so you know, there's been a lot of applause in the chat box. And there were a lot of questions, and you obviously have some fans and some music requests. So I'm gonna let maybe Nick start with the Q&A questions.
Okay.
Sure. We have a Sarah Hageman from Boone who's asking about learning the mountain dulcimer, and how would you recommend getting started with your first dulcimer, and what resources you would recommend in person or in Western North Carolina.
Yeah, there's, well, you can go to the Kelishek Music Store and get a dulcimer in Brasstown, for example. You can order dulcimers like from McSpadden or the Mountain Music Dulcimer Shop in Mountain View, Arkansas. You can also contact me, and I will answer that more thoroughly, aubreyfolk@aol.com, or you can find me on my website and contact me that way, Atwater-Donnelly.com. But there's actually some virtual workshops happening right now. People are giving private lessons, and there's some festivals that are going virtual. And so there's a number of different ways to get started. And there are teachers and centers right in the North Carolina area. And of course, when the folk school resumes, there are lots of wonderful beginning dulcimer classes. So sign up for a dulcimer class at the folk school.
One more. Catherine Shreve asks, could you elaborate on how the African American influences on Appalachian dance?
On Appalachian dance, I would say one component it's a combination of the music and the dance. The fiddlers and the banjo players and the musicians and the dance callers historically were African American until through the 19th century and into the 20th century. And so they couldn't help but infuse African rhythms, like the presence of syncopation in dance and music is an important African contribution. The melodies, dance calling is something that evolved in America because people were not in one place long enough to have a community that they didn't just know the dances the way they might have in England, for example, or Ireland. So dance calling became a thing in America, and the dance callers were African American. So some of the steps I do, like when I do that chug in the flat footing, that's directly attributed to an African slave step. And some of the movements in square dancing and line dancing are from African roots. Dancing in a circle is thought to have African as well as Native American connections. So there are a lot of answers to that. I'm just closing out something here. So I hope, did I answer it? I forget.
And lastly, this one's a jewel. Larry Murphy, I would give a pretty penny to hear Aubrey play Spanish Lady. That I first heard in person in Rhode Island. I fell in love with her then. Sorry, Elwood.
No worries.
Just wanted to hear that.
Well, if we have any tiny bit of a minute left, I can at least play a little bit of it at the end. Should I do that now, or do we have more questions?
I'll leave that up to Darcy.
Why don't we see if Tammy has any burning questions from the chat, and then we can end on that.
Okay, good.
So first, your cousin Dora wants to say hi, Aubrey, and you go, girl.
Hi, Dora.
Hi, Dora.
She's about half an hour from me.
And we do have one from Jason. Are there standout old-time archives or collections with online public access that you think are notable?
Absolutely. The John and Alan Lomax collection, the Wolf collection, I'm trying to think, the Smithsonian, Library of Congress, the Ozark Folk Center, Berea College. There are lots of wonderful archives out there, and in the last 20 years or so, people have been working diligently to digitize. They even do things like put the reel-to-reel tapes that are all stuck together, they put them in ovens to unstick them. So there's all kinds of work that's been done in the last couple decades. So those are some of them. And again, people are also welcome to private message me or privately contact me so that I can give you more coherent answers or even links.
And one more I think just popped up. Let's see. What is the name of the dancing wooden figures?
Those, we call them limberjacks, but there are a lot of names for them. The dancing dolls, dancing man, jig dolls, J-I-G, jig dolls. Let me show you.
Traditional style.
Yeah, this is a very traditional one. We actually sell these on our website, this kind. And you can find them if you Google limberjacks, you can probably find them out there. This lady, she has traveled in our van, our tour van, for a long time, and Elwood always has to straighten out her dress before she dances. And those were made by some people in Pennsylvania we met at a festival. But yep, so that's the story on that.
And on my end too, I'm receiving a lot of requests for Spanish lady.
There we go. Okay, so we're gonna finish out, and I want to thank the Folk School for inviting me. It's wonderful to get an opportunity to hang out a little bit in our Zoom meeting and just to have a taste of the school a little bit. When we are all able to resume, I just cannot emphasize enough how much you want to sign up for a class. It's a very special experience, very life-changing, and the Folk School has made a huge impression on my life personally, and it is a template in a lot of ways for how we live. The non-competitive learning, the creative lifestyle, the community lifestyle. So let's do a short version of Spanish Lady. This is one of our greatest hits. It's about a 300-year-old Irish song. So who said we don't do covers, right? And it's got a great chorus. You sing numbers backwards by twos. So good luck on that. Sing along. About the hour of 12 at night, it was Well,
Fun.
it's been my pleasure to present for you today, and it was nice to be able to do something to acknowledge the class that we would have had.
Thank you so much. You've got a lot of positive feedback in the chat, and you'll be able to read that later too. And we shared your email and your website and a link to a blog about you on our folk school blog. So feel free, everyone can check out those, and we will send a follow-up email. We've had a question about archiving these programs. We will send a follow-up email with a link to the video so that you can watch it again. I think you have a couple people who will watch it more than once.
Great.
You can share it. So thank you so much. And please join us for the next webinar. We will have a webinar on June 15th at 4 p.m. featuring Lyle Wheeler, who will talk about woodworking and the classic Appalachian ladderback chair. So I shared a link for you to register for that, and we'll be posting about it on social media.
Wonderful. I want to thank my special guest for joining me today.
You're quite welcome.
Glad he was available.
Glad to be here. I checked my calendar. It was empty.
It was a nice surprise. Okay, well, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you next time. Stay crafty.
Well,
Bye, everybody.
Bye.